There aren't any piazzas in Saudi Arabia. Some of you may know I'm doing a project in the GCC, which stands for the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is comprised of 6 regional Middle Eastern countries. It was formed in 1981 to promote economic, security, and cultural cooperation between the 6 countries. And since that time, each of them has progressed in their own way, developing the country, amongst other things, culturally, which has created a lot of change from the traditional countries that they were. And one of those is adding piazzas. I was on a call today with a colleague who develops projects in Saudi Arabia, and we were talking about experience design. As he was walking through several of his projects, he mentioned that Saudi Arabia doesn't have piazzas. Of course, they have central gathering places for community, but typically that's something like a souk, which is around shopping, or a mosque, which is religious. There's of course public gardens and cafes and restaurants and other gathering places, but nothing quite like what the Italian piazza is, which is the place where everybody sort of hangs out, eats, socializes, just sort of relaxes, that's not attached to something religious or to commerce. He emphasized that creating a piazza is an important shift that will bring different behaviors for the culture in a good way, which is why I love working in different countries, because it's understanding how the people of those countries and those cities and sometimes even those smaller towns and regions behave now. And by changing a design element like adding a piazza, how would that change their behavior because they now have this space to interact in? And this is just one example of how creating a space that nobody even knew that they needed elicits a new behavior and therefore changes the culture. We can point to lots of different places where we've seen this, like the advent of the mall. A bunch of stores that used to live on an avenue in a neighborhood, now in a giant complex, and everything that you need is inside of one building. Or music festivals, bringing together multiple musical acts across several days instead of just one-off concerts. Or even things like smaller cars or SUVs. We went through both of those cycles globally as cars got smaller and then cars got bigger. So as the GCC continues to develop, this is going to be a very interesting part of how that culture and that area changes, and the people are going to be a pinnacle part of how it develops because they are the ones responsible for interacting in these new spaces or places, which is going to determine how those cities develop both internally and on a global scale. I'll see you tomorrow.